Hello, my name is Reverend Jeff Prothro, and I serve as pastor at DeSoto United Methodist Church. For the past 7 weeks, we've been enduring our shelter-in-place situation. We've been quarantined with our families, and like all of you, we've been experiencing kind of a new and different level of stress and things of that nature. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to offer this interview I had with licensed psychologist Tammy McKinsky. She's a member of DeSoto United Methodist Church. And this is just an informational interview as we kind of have a conversation around issues of mental health, particularly how we are experiencing this situation, this pandemic during this time. We focus on a couple of things. One is the grief that we are experiencing, those things that we are mourning as we are forced to adjust the way we live our daily lives. I think it's important to name that grief. When we talk about stressors and how to reduce feelings of anger, what to do to get onto an exit ramp when we start experiencing kind of that new level of stress that so many of us are experiencing. And we provide some resources regarding what to do if you're feeling like you're needing some extra help and care with your mental health during this time. It's a nice, informative interview. I hope you find it useful. I know I certainly was able to learn a lot of new things in my conversation with Tammy, and I just appreciate all of you being able to take the time and know that we are thinking about you, we see you, we understand that what we're experiencing at this point is unprecedented, and we just want to offer this as a means for some guidance and permission for anyone who are needing help to seek the help necessary to help maintain a healthy balance as best we can during this time of quarantine. Thank you so much. I hope you look forward to the interview.
Hi.
Hi, Tammy. How are you today?
I'm good. Good morning.
Good morning. It's good to hear you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah. And we're on another week of quarantine.
Yes, we are.
I think it's week 7, or maybe it's week 70. I'm not sure anymore. So,
I know. I know. It's a lot, whatever it is.
Right. I know it'll be nice. Well, we're still learning to adjust. I'll just leave it at that. Let me do a quick introduction. Tammy McKinsky, licensed psychologist, is here today to talk a little bit around issues of mental health and what we can be doing during this time of quarantine. I'm very appreciative of Tammy being able to join me this morning and offering some words of wisdom, and knowing that all of us are experiencing a wide range of just stuff during this time. And so I'll just kind of let Tammy talk initially about kind of some things to think about as we continue our time of quarantine, how we can stay as mentally healthy as possible, and what are some things we can do when we find ourselves perhaps at a place where we're needing to access some tools to help us calm down, ease anxiety, to keep anger from exploding, and all those various issues that I think any number of us are experiencing. So, Tammy, I'll just kind of let you start us off then a little bit.
Sure. Well, thanks for asking me. And I think the current circumstances have really brought to the fore people's mental health and how it's impacted by not only kind of the trauma of the quickness of the onset and kind of the life-threatening nature of the COVID-19 situation, but also just the social isolation piece and the dramatic change in people's everyday lives. So I think all those things compounded have made it so probably there are very, very few people who have been left untouched psychologically by these events. So just to kind of talk in general terms about some of the things I've been thinking about and seeing in folks is definitely there's going to be a lot of grief related to losses in many, many ways. So losses of regular routine, losses of milestones like graduations, the way birthdays have been celebrated, losses of groups that people regularly get together with. I'm grieving the loss of the NCAA tournament. I know. So, you know, lots of loss. And then I think you're going to see people who have what we call an adjustment disorder, which is kind of a response to some big event that happens in your life that just kind of rocks you a little bit more than usual. So where you may be feeling a little more depressed or anxious, or even notice changes in your behavior. And it's different than grief. Grief kind of comes in waves, and an adjustment disorder is going to be something that's sort of going to stick with you more of the time. Mm-hmm. And I think for sure there'll be some people who will develop, or who we need to have on our radar, that may have, you know, even trauma responses, especially people in healthcare or people who have lost loved ones during this time in real traumatic ways, where they haven't been able to say goodbye in the manner in which they had thought that they would be able to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know we've been talking about that in our house a little bit. Things like we're not able just to go see NAMI, or, you know, one of our children was very upset about not being able to do all the 5th grade things at the end of school. And then we talked quite a bit about, you know, from a pastoral perspective, you know, the loss of church, in the sense of everybody being able to congregate and gather. And, you know, I've always been one to say, you know, I'm an introvert. You know, people, if I'm around too many people for too long a time, I get tired. But oh my gosh, I'm missing that as well. And kind of making those adjustments, and necessarily so, but also knowing that collectively, you know, what are some of those best strategies, to name that we are grieving, and grief is normal. It's okay to grieve. I think we need to give ourselves permission to do that. But also, too, a lot of us may be experiencing things that we frankly have never experienced before, and kind of making sense of those emotions, and how to both, it's interesting, that balance of naming it, approaching it, understanding, but also not wanting to reach a point where you really begin affecting others around you in negative ways. And kind of finding that balance during this time, I think, is something that we're all having to negotiate. What are some strategies initially you think were you able to find that balance as we experience all this collectively?
Sure. Well, I think, you know, we're very social beings, and, you know, to stay with kind of my Jayhawk theme, you know, we can cram 16,000 people in Allen Fieldhouse for a game, and we all love being there. We like the energy. We like being with other people. And we like being with families and coworkers and people like that. And kind of the number one thing that helps us not be depressed is what we call social support. So being connected with other people. So I think one thing is, I think the term physical distancing is probably better than social distancing, because you want to still stay as connected as possible socially with your support people. So either through Zoom, or I've heard of grandparents writing letters, or I've heard a great idea of a grandparent reading the nighttime story for a little bit of an older child, so a parent could get a baby to bed, and that can be done via Zoom. So I think there's ways to stay connected, and people get creative, you know, which is awesome, with how they've stayed connected. The flip side of that is if we're all crammed into our houses and we may feel a little too connected to the people in our current environment. So, and our tempers can kind of flare more easily. I talk about people going from simmer. If you're at simmer most of the time, you can go to boil pretty quickly. So I think the idea of taking a break is super important. And I tell people it's important to take a break on the exit ramp to getting upset versus waiting till you're totally upset. So the minute you kind of start to notice your heart rate is going, or it's increasing, or you're getting revved up, you're getting louder, or maybe you're shutting down. Maybe you're the kind of person who shuts down more. And when you start to notice that exit ramp, then I think it's important to say, I need a break. Tell yourself you need a break. Tell your loved ones you need a break. And it's super important to kind of get outside of the hearing and sight of your loved ones so you can really kind of calm down. Great strategy I use a lot with clients, and I think it's super useful for me in situations where I get upset, is to do some breathing. And so a really simple strategy I'd shared with you earlier was a 4-count breathing. By using this 4-count breathing, you can generally drop your heart rate about 8 beats, unless you're on medication or just had a Red Bull or something like that. But if you just inhale to a count of 4 and hold it for 2, and then just exhale to a count of 4. And inhale to a count of 4 and hold it for 2, and then just exhale to a count of 4. And one final time, inhale to a count of 4 and hold it for 2, and then just exhale to a count of 4. And there's actually really good, solid research, and I'll check in and see how you're feeling, Jeff, after doing the breathing.
Oh yeah, it really is relaxing, and
yeah,
I know we've talked about this, and I do practice it, and it really, for me, you know, where I get kind of caught up in the midst of the quarantine is kind of issues around anxiety, and my mind will start racing, and come out with worst case scenarios versus best case scenarios, and they'll kind of get all jumbled together, and you know, I'll have to step out and just breathe, you know, take that time to breathe, and it really does lower the heart rate to where, okay, wait a minute, and then it also helps my mind lower its speed at which it's trying to process all this different information and things like that. So it is very helpful.
Yeah, and there's good research behind the fact that just breathing impacts anxiousness, anxiety. I think another thing, the situation you described where maybe your mind starts to go places that makes you feel anxious. An analogy I use a lot with clients is to imagine kind of your thoughts are like horses in a corral. And we generally want our horses to just be there munching on hay and being relaxed. And we want to be able to tolerate a little bit of excitement around things in our life. But we don't want to be busting down the gate and be 10 miles down the road with anxiety. So again, when you start to feel that exit ramp to the anxiety, then I think you can start to do some things cognitively or with your mind to kind of ask yourself, well, what are the facts here? You know, what's really the evidence that what I'm worried about is going to happen? Right. And to really try to use breathing and other kinds of mindfulness to kind of keep yourself in the moment.
Yeah, and again, if we could talk a little bit more too, as well as we think about our time in quarantine, and for a lot of folks whose economic situations have changed drastically, and then you add another layer for folks who are schooling from home and trying to ensure that goes as smoothly as possible. And then kind of this forced togetherness. Talk a little bit more too, you know, we're talking about the exit ramp strategy around issues of anger. what are some other ways that folks can help de-escalate situations, or if people do feel maybe endangered, what are some steps to take as well to help alleviate harm to others and harm to oneself?
Sure. And I think probably one thing would have been good to preface this whole conversation with is I'm not providing therapy now
Right.
for
Sure.
individuals. We're just chatting about kind of general psychoeducational strategies. So everybody's situation is going to be unique. Kind of back on the first part of what you mentioned about losses related to maybe jobs and finances and things like that. Where you can feel pretty hopeless or desperate. I think it's important to kind of take a page out of what we call dialectical behavior therapy and realize that it's really important to validate your feelings, that it is a really difficult, hard situation, and that that you can be a resilient person who can problem solve. So it's able, this approach kind of enables you to hold both of those things at the same time. But it's really important to validate your feelings and to make sure that you're feeling your feelings, because your feelings are important and they're valid in these types of circumstances. As far as kind of personal safety things go, I think it's really important to think about taking that break. And if you are around someone who becomes what we call kind of dysregulated or becomes really scary or out of control, you can still call the police, call a friend. I think one of the more concerning things that the psychological community is noticing, and I know you're going to have Tammy Holwick talk about this, is that we're really concerned that there's an increase in not reported domestic violence during this time. Yeah. And both in partnerships and also with families. Mm-hmm. And so we really want people to take breaks, call for help. Mm-hmm. I can give you some numbers for hotlines and things like that that can be resources for people. I think too, I really encourage people to watch their alcohol consumption during this time. Mm-hmm. Because what we know about alcohol and substances is it tends to increase risk-taking and decrease problem solving. And so if you add substances to any kind of situation where there might be tempers flaring and that kind of thing, generally it's not going to be helpful. And again, I think we're seeing statistics that alcohol sales are up. So I think it's just important to be aware of the combination of the circumstances.
Right. I know I'll be posting when this gets posted numbers for folks to access.
Great.
And I know you sent me that link to the excellent USA Today article with some kind of free services, so to speak, and what to do when you are feeling anxiety, when you're feeling depression, all those issues that to some regard you're really forced to have to deal with now because this is where we are in this moment. And so I think all of these are good resources for folks. I know in our conversation, as we talk about how to stay mentally healthy, something that I just continually come back to is this willingness to kind of name what you're experiencing, to talk about, to say, this is what I'm feeling right now. We're always trying to encourage our kids, even if they're happy or mad or said, okay, you can let us know that this is what you're feeling. You can let us know that you disagree with what a parent is saying. Like, the children, they want to go out and play with friends and do all the things that children do. And we'll have to limit their activity in that regard. And we've given them permission to say, I don't agree. I don't like having to not be able to do this and things like
Sure.
that. And I think, extending that to adults as well and being
Absolutely.
to
It's
communicate.
okay to not like this.
Yes.
Totally okay to not like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, I'd be worried about people who do like this.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, one, I think I really wanted to kind of talk about, just some initial strategies, willingness to name, and, look at things like, okay, before you get onto that highway of anger, it's okay to get to the exit ramp. And then naming things such as grief. This is a grieving process that a lot of us are having to deal with, and will continue as more and more things get altered from what we used to know, to kind of whatever the new reality is going to look like will come with a certain set of mourning and loss. As a pastor who moves around in the Methodist Church, again, every time there's a move, while there may be excitement involved with that, there's also mourning and grief. Any transition in life, you're going to experience that. And I think it's okay. And it's good to hear this is a grieving process that a lot of us are going through. And also as well, to the willingness to name our anxieties and our experience of depression. And for a lot of us, this is the first time we'll have experienced feelings and those things. And there are tools available, some free resources, which we'll make available. And within those resources too, for some folks, it may mean kind of the Zoom therapy or having access to mental health professionals and utilizing their gifts and abilities to help all of us kind of remain as whole as possible in the midst of these circumstances. I am going to ask a bit of a curveball question as we close our time. Had a little technical difficulty there, but we're back. And I did just want to kind of ask one final thing as we move forward for Tammy. What is something good that you think can come out of this with in terms of the quarantine and our mental health?
Sure. Well, I think people may find out that they're maybe stronger and more resourceful and resilient than they thought they were. And I think people have good self-care in place, and people who maybe were in therapy or had psychological tools prior to this, if they use them, they may feel really good that they were helpful for them. So my hope is, even though this is definitely a difficult circumstance, that people will be able to see themselves as resilient and able to get through, this unprecedented experience.
Yeah. Thank you, Tammy. Again, there are phone numbers in the comment section, some resources for you. Like we've mentioned, if you feel like even something is about to happen or is coming on, or you're experiencing things, but you're not really sure how to move forward, don't hesitate to reach out. Don't hesitate to try to get in contact with folks who can help you or a family member or a friend along with this process. There is help available, and each and every one of us really do deserve that help. And just know that there are a lot of people who are ready to step in and help take care of one another, and in this case around issues around your own mental health, because you all matter and you are important. Thank you, Tammy. Appreciate you taking the time today. And
Thank you.
And I hope everyone experiencing this will have kind of a good sense on how to move forward and have a blessed day. So thank you.